Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to, this is now episode 3 of Building CareCo. I sit down with my co-founder and CTO, Shlomo Morozow, over a bottle of wine, and we discuss the successes, failures of Building CareCo, the funds, the ups, the downs throughout the week, and then just general market topics and things like that. It's a lot of fun. So far, the feedback on the first 2 episodes has been really cool, I gotta say. As someone that has been doing another podcast for the last 3 years, it's pretty cool to see that kind of engagement. So,
I was hoping there would be no views.
Yeah, I know. This is pure Murphy's Law for you. So today's bottle is an interesting company. I've never actually had this company before. It's called Zion Winery. Like I mentioned, a lot of the good kosher wines come from Israel, and so this comes in a nice box. And then it comes from the Judean Hills. So this is actually a mix. I feel like the mixes are more misses, than hits, generally speaking, in my experience. But I'm not exactly a connoisseur. I'm just a guy who drinks wine.
I mean, in a lot of different types of drinks or foods, when there's a blend, it's often because one thing on its own cannot hold itself. So you kind of mix it.
Right. That's a good point. So this is actually kind of interesting.
So like, single origin coffee, single origin, single malt whiskey and all that stuff. So, I mean, you could also argue that there's a benefit to the blends,
right,
to the mixes, they have full body, they have...
I guess the question is, why did you blend?
Exactly.
That's the question, right? That's the important thing. So this is interesting. Zion is a Jerusalem family winery, which has been making wine for over 170 years. Crowned their flagship wine, which is a Bordeaux-style blend, which is rich, complex, and a bunch of other random stuff about French barrels. So, that's, see how it is? Usually you can just kind of take these things off, but sometimes they really glue them on. So what a day, huh? We had quite the day today. Oh my goodness.
Well-deserved bottle of wine.
Yes.
What about you, Shlomo? You don't get any wine?
Yeah, we got to start getting 2 bottles for
let's give him some wine.
For our Jamie here. So it's a good cork. And for sir. There we go. Now we're all cooking. All right. L'chaim, episode 3.
Wow.
I take that back.
I like it.
Yeah, it's quite nice.
It's got some personality, not like last week where it was like...
Yeah, it's still a little light, still a little watery, but it definitely has a lot more flavor.
And anyone who knows anything about wines will laugh at us that we're not aerating it or, giving it enough.
Yeah, this is not a wine podcast. This is not a wine podcast.
Right.
The wine is in service of the podcast, just like AI should be in service of you, not the other way around. Okay.
Nice. Yeah.
Thank you. I've been doing a lot of these demos. So, today we had a bit of a dumpster fire for about 20 minutes.
Right.
CareCo went down for 20 minutes, and it was quite an interesting experience. So it was a couple things. It was.
It wasn't fully down. It wasn't fully down for everybody. You noticed that?
No, I didn't
notice that. Not everybody. Yeah, it was basically on the front end specifically, and whoever already had the cached version and didn't refresh their page
went down.
They were fully operational. Yeah.
Interesting. So a couple clients it went down for. It was a very interesting experience for a couple of reasons. First of all, as a non-technical founder, I had no control at all over the situation. I had no idea even what was happening. So I knew you were on it. So it was this moment in my head. I actually filmed this for myself for later. It was a moment in my own, I didn't film it for Instagram, just for myself, for when moments like this happen. It was a moment in my head where I felt like a mix of extreme anxiety, but also freedom, because it's terrifying when your clients can't access your thing, and some of those clients were calling me. But on the flip side, I had no control over the situation. I knew you were on it. I knew we had our best people on it. And that was it. I actually had a meeting a couple minutes in with with actually Jay Hoffman, who now joined us for sales. So also exciting, different topic. But had a meeting. I just had to jump in, just like have a normal meeting, and just like there was nothing I could do. Like there's like a fire burning around me, but like okay, there's nothing. This is not in my control at all. It was fun.
Right. And I was actually not immediately on it because I didn't realize the severity of it. I told my wife I'll take my daughter to school. So I drove her to school.
Right.
And while I was driving, I realized, oh my God, this is something bigger than what I thought. And I don't have my laptop with me.
Yeah.
So
it took 20 minutes in total, but it probably would have taken 7 minutes had the perfect storm not happened. And also, you weren't just out at that moment, but some other of our teammates were also happened to be out, like all at the same exact
So
moment.
honestly, like for me, for my background of just writing code, small things, not big systems, I always freak out of someone relying on the thing that I'm building and that it breaking and that like I'm gonna like freeze and not know what to do, because some people are like that when when like it's emergency, like they can't think. And I think I have some of that where I get overwhelmed. And I always have like this, and I remember when I joined the previous company I was at, Vimeo, when I joined and I realized how many people are using the product daily, like millions. And I was like a bit concerned, like if you make a change, I mean, they have a very robust process there and they have people that know how to handle, rollbacks and monitor stuff. They have a lot of, systems in place to kind of safeguard it. But I remember like that fear, like, oh, what happens? But here it's even more, it's greater because it's like,
it's your baby.
There's no one I can like say, hey, what's going on?
Right.
I mean, actually Menachem is helpful and I kind of messaged him a bit back and forth and he was helpful with that. So it's good that we have other people.
Right. It just happened to be a perfect storm where like, everyone was like out for a couple minutes and kind of, but it was really interesting. So it was a cool feeling to kind of go through. But also it really brought to light how, okay, I'm going to say this in a really negative way, and then I'm going to explain why I don't mean this in a negative way. Your worst clients are your worst clients. Yeah. Meaning like very often it's like, I mean, it's the 80-20 rule with everything. 20% of your clients take up 80% of your energy, or like there's always that kind of rule. Or like your smallest clients that often freak out at you like the most. And this was definitely that kind of situation where like we have a number of very large clients that are on it, and I immediately fired off emails to like all of them immediately, like boom, FYI, we're having a bit of a situation, take a coffee break, we'll be back up in a couple minutes, we're on it, like boom, immediately. All the big clients emailed me back like, no problem, thank you, you guys are so helpful, it's so nice to work with you, no worries, we'll go, blah blah. Right. And we have one small client who, I love you if you're watching, but boom, immediately messages from the users, the manager and the CEO calling, texting. They have my cell, WhatsApping me, and I'm like, we understand, we're on it. And so but then I realized that like we're also like that, meaning like, so we had this situation today where we were negotiating with a vendor, right? And you were, to your credit, you were like extremely, extremely meticulous about every single detail in that agreement. And I felt ourselves being that client on the other side, where I'm like, we are a relatively small client to this company who has companies paying them hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. And like, we are technically a small, and we're like the ones asking every single question. But you know what? Like, that is your role when you're still a small client. You are the type of person that's going to be meticulous about everything, because the bigger businesses, they have more business, they have more experience, they've seen things. And I think it's just part of the natural progression of a company. When you're smaller, you're more annoying. Like it is like, because you take things more seriously and you take things more detailed and more like you're on top of every little thing. Right.
So I would say there's two elements. I think there's a sense of urgency is one element of why someone would call you, 20 minutes, whatever. They feel the impact, they want to take care of it. But the downside is that you can have people that have that, and you can say that the larger of a company you are, you're just a contact, you don't care. Like the CEO is not going to call us, obviously, at a large company. It's going to be some person that's their role, and they don't really, their incentives are not, aligned as if just like the CEO or the greatest stakeholder. So by nature, they're going to be like that. They're not going to be as, oh my God, we got to get this done. But the flip side of it is that they could have that, but they're also, they're, you can say, more mature in their communication, because, as urgent as it is, you have to know how to put things in context, and you can't burn your bridges. Like, I'm very cognizant when something's urgent and I'm pressing somebody, I always have to keep that balance of like, it has to be. I have to have. What do you call it?
Social currency.
Social currency, exactly.
I'm very into that. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, what kind of a client am I? What do I mean to this person? What have I given them? How much can I demand now from them? If it's just a one way, you're just going to end up. At some point, they're just going to say, "Dude, they're just going to cut you loose." So I think that's like a sense of social intelligence that happens, maybe with maturity or certain type of people. But that's how I see it.
Yeah. Yeah, let's explore social currency for a second, because it's a topic that I really love. So I originally picked it up from Jack Welch, CEO of GE. He's got a book called Winning, I think it's called, and he talks about this concept a lot. And I think it is like one of the absolute truisms in life. Social currency, for those that have never heard that term, is the idea that in every social interaction, there is a currency. And you might listen to this and it might trigger you that, oh, people are so transactional, but this is life. Like, I don't really know. This is absolutely true. This is how we interact.
Human nature, yeah.
Absolutely. So like, there's always a dynamic in every single conversation, every single interaction, every single relationship where there's a give and take. And you know what? At every single level, whether it's a marriage or a friendship or a business relationship or however you want to go up and down that spectrum, it is a give and take. And if there's only one person taking and only one person giving, that relationship is going to break. Yeah. So there might be different levels of tolerance for that depending on how deep your relationship is and how much history you have with that person. So obviously with your spouse, it would take a long time for that relationship to finally break. At a friendship, at some point you're going to be like, look, dude, like, we used to be friends a couple years ago, but like, this is like enough. I can't, I'm just giving to this relationship. And then in business, I think it's much more, because business by nature is transactional. So I think that in business, you always have to be super conscious of like, do you have currency in the other person's bank? And every time you give them something, you're adding currency. And every time you take something or request something, you're depleting your currency. And always be really, 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 really conscious that you're doing that. And it might sound, like I said, it might sound transactional. It might sound like a gross concept. But I think that it actually keeps you not being selfish. Like, it keeps you being conscious of like, how am I providing at least an equal amount of value to the world, to the business world that I'm taking? And at best case scenario, how am I giving more value than I'm taking, so that I always know that there's more currency in that bank?
Right, exactly. And that's how, it's a win-win. Everybody gains and everybody doesn't drain the other person. It reminds me of something totally left field, not related, but for somewhat it reminded me. You remember when you started CareCo before I was involved? You remember how that ended?
Like when we started?
Remember how your first agency that was doing the work, how that ended?
Yeah.
You want to talk about that or
Sure.
not really?
Yeah. I'm not sure where you're going with it. It's social currency, but
no, because I was thinking of the fact of like, you got to think long term. Even if something's pressing now, social currency is about being fair. I think it comes down to fairness. It's not about what's the optimized path to building, relationships. It's not a self-serving. It happens to serve you best, but more in the long term, because people realize that you're respectful of them and that your demands are reasonable, and you're also giving equally. So I think it's about fairness. And it just reminded me of when, that story where you got abandoned suddenly, where someone dropped the ball on you. And I was like, that's so short-sighted of that person, because this is the way you build a company is not by winning big deals. It's by building trust slowly. Another person. There's a finite amount of people in this world, and there's a finite amount of people in the industry that you are. And people talk. And that's how it works. You build trust one by one. And
relationships.
Yeah, so that was, we don't have to talk about it.
No, you know what? I think it's good, because it's actually like, it's a CareCo origin story. So February 13th of 2023, the idea for CareCo popped in my head. And I know this because I think I said this already. I texted Israel.
You have that text pinned.
I do. I have it saved. Yeah, I just resent it to him actually as like a reminder. And a little bit after that, so I had this idea of like building something with AI that's going to listen to calls, that's going to help the care coordinators, and it's going to do all this stuff.
You saw all the opportunity there. You're like, oh my God, this could,
Yeah. And a little bit after that, I was part of the Slack community, and two people in the community built a tool for the Slack community that basically was a little AI thing inside of it that kept track of everything that happened. And the idea was that you could basically use a certain, like, what's it called in Slack, a command? Maybe? No, whatever, something where, like, like backsplit, whatever. You could use like a certain command, and then you can ask any question, and it'll basically give you an intelligent answer, essentially like a ChatGPT that's trained just on the Slack community. That's what they built. And I was like, wow, that's cool, these guys. So I had no idea anybody that was like an AI engineer or anything or anybody. And so I reached out to these guys, and they ended up starting an AI agency. And I basically asked them to create the MVP of CareCo. And absolutely, and we're working together, and they did. So it's also important to mention that around this time is when I started talking to you about the idea. And it's important because you were very, very helpful. You had nothing to gain from this at all. You were just...
I had a full-time job.
Very
I wasn't
happy.
Planning on leaving.
Yeah, not looking for another job. Very happy, but just on weekends we'd meet up, and I would just tell you, and you were like coaching me through this process, just making sure that you were pretty skeptical of them, I think, from day one, but you were like, listen, just make sure this, make sure that. Like they basically ended up giving me, instead of an hourly price, they gave me a scope, like a scope price, which you thought was like very amateur on their part because it doesn't make a lot of sense. It was also wasn't a lot of money.
I was actually pushing you to do this.
I know, but it was stupid for them, you were saying, because like they don't know how. You were saying for my own protection, I should go for scope pricing, but for them, it sounded very amateur that they would just agree to it. Also, it was like $6,500 or something, I think. So they were basically going to build the MVP.
How comfortable are you with sharing all this information?
Yeah, I mean, this is like idea. I didn't even like have the full thing in my head yet, but it was like the original thing was literally connecting to a phone and getting soap notes. That was like the original thing. Now it's crazy to see how far it's come and how big the idea has become and all that, which is wild. But yeah, so anyway, so they were kind of building it and they weren't really getting anywhere. And long story short, after like 2 months, one day they just told me, we found we're just too busy with other things and we're just dropping it. And they made it sound like they built like 90% of it, but the last 10% they couldn't figure out, or they hadn't figured out yet. And they just basically said like, we're dropping it. And I remember it was July, I think it was July 15th or June 15th. And I was expecting to go live August 1st. So it was July 15th. It was like 15 days to go live. And I was just left holding the bag. And it was so crazy because like they got mad at me when I said, okay, so like give me, because they had like a guarantee or something. Oh, they gave me the option. They said either we'll give you your money back or we'll give you I don't know what they said. And I basically said, like, give me whatever you built and give me my money back. You promised me a product. You didn't give me the product. Like, what are you talking about? And then they got all mad at me and they were like, oh, wow, like, we'll never work with you in the future. I'm like, what do you understand that in this scenario, you are the one doing the screwing. You understand this, right? Like, what are you even talking about?
They'll never work you because you're going to be like begging them to work with you because you had such a success with them.
I'm like, what are you even saying? So anyway, so they gave us the stuff. You still, full-time job, had no inkling of leaving, had no anything, but you jumped in after hours and you basically built this. You built it for me in like a week, not just what they built, but actually made it live, like actually connected to actually work for my company, for Previva. And that was a wild roller coaster time of kind of the original inception of CareCo.
Yeah.
That was a good time.
So I mean, like the reason why I was skeptical was because I've seen too many of these agencies that they come in and they give you an estimate and then it drags out forever and they just keep on getting away with it. And I think, and like in your scenario, like they dropped the ball on you and then they were upset that you took the money back. Instead of telling you profusely that they're sorry and giving you your money back and saying, how can we make this up for you? They kind of try to make you feel bad. And I think the explanation is because the way I think of it is probably that there's just such a larger demand than supply that you don't have consequences for screwing your clients because there are people knocking on your door for jobs, for you to do jobs for them in this industry. At least that's how it was. And I think
especially back then when you put the word AI, this was like literally beginning of 2023. I mean, you even said that you knew what generative AI was and people were
I think in the last like 10, 15 years, software has been like that. There's such a demand and the minute you feel that you always have new jobs, you don't feel that this one client that it didn't work out with, you have to make it right for them. I mean, even because on paper it doesn't make sense. Like it's going to cost you this amount. You're going to be at a deficit at the end.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it comes from, and that's where they feel free to drag it up. And most of them tell you hourly, because hourly gives them the freedom to do bad estimates. They'll say, oh, it's going to be 2 months. And then in 2 months, they'll just be halfway there, and they'll be like, oh yeah, it's off the estimate, off the mark. We need another 2 months, and you're paying them hourly, so it's not it's not contractual. It's not scope based. So I think that's how people get away with it. And I think I don't like it because, first of all, obviously, it's not fair. Yet you should be fair to people around you. So I think it's not morally right. But I also think it's stupid because long term, the real way you build a business and is by trust. And trust is one happy client at a time.
Yeah.
And I think in your case, they should have just doubled down, figure out what they need to do, burn the time, lose the money, but say, okay, we learned from it. Because by dropping the ball, you don't learn. You learn by finishing the job. That's how you learn. You don't learn by saying, oh, this is too hard, next time I'll do better. No, you don't know how to do better because you didn't even finish the job. You got stuck in the middle.
So I think you're obviously correct, but I think that from like a step above, like a bird's eye view, that's impossible what you're saying, because they played the exact role that they chose in life / that life chose of them. Meaning, if they would do what you were saying, they would be you. They wouldn't be an agency that was run by a bunch of young kids that were trying to like hustle things out. Like they would be like you are a serious person, you're a serious developer. You took this very seriously from day one. It took me like a year to convince you to come over because you were very, 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 like in depth about understanding all the details, understanding if I knew what I was talking about. You went from not knowing anything about value-based care to being extremely proficient in the market and understanding the space. And also the value piece, like you are the type of person, and this goes back to that, because every single person that ended up working for CareCo or with CareCo provided value basically naturally. You were more than happy to just like share things and provide value. You weren't looking to, you weren't just looking to take things, and that's why this worked out very well. So my point is that like if they were the type of person that you were saying, then they wouldn't be them. You know what I'm saying?
I hear what you're saying, but I still think there are people that want to do the agency work, and they're still, they have integrity. I don't see them necessarily.
Really?
Yeah.
You believe that? Aren't you the first person to say like we never outsource anything, because your mindset
I don't
is
think
like
financially it's smart to be an agency because you can never scale exponentially. You're just scaling linearly. You're basically exchanging time for money, and you have a finite amount of time.
No, you have a fundamental belief in CareCo that nothing should be outsourced because we are all extremely passionate about what we do and we're serious about what we do. And it's impossible to have that when you're just an agency worker, when you're a rental.
The quality of an agency versus in-house, if you have good talent, there's nothing to compare.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that there aren't good agencies. It just means that their work, as good as they're going to be, they're never going to give that 110 and 20. Even if I was an agency, I would do my best. I always make sure I take pride in the work that I do. It's something that I won't be able to live without, but it's still different. And I think, so that's just my take.
Yeah.
And I think these people, if you can't learn without falling and hurting from the consequences. If you drop the ball and there's no consequences, you don't learn because you feel like there wasn't an issue. And I think,
You know what's so crazy? I don't even remember the guy's name. I'm trying to remember his name. I can't remember his name. It's a funny concept because like there's a point in my life where like he was like, this person was like very important to, like I wrapped CareCo around this person.
It was lack of experience.
And I just can't even remember. I can't even remember their name. And this speaks to like another thing that I think I've said in the past, but about like the train concept. Can I talk about that?
Yeah. Not on the podcast.
Not on this. Yeah, I like this mindset. I still feel like I don't have the right words, like say this like a Gary Vee kind of thing. But the idea is that like you are a train and you're moving, and your train is going to stop at certain stations, and certain people are going to choose to get on your train, and certain people are not going to choose to get on your train. But the people that choose to not get on your train do not change, dictate, alter, or in any way impact the fact that your train is moving to that destination. And once you wrap your head around that, you'll understand that like the people that you meet that choose to help you, they're going to choose to help you. And the people that you meet that you wish they would help you because you know exactly how they can help you and they don't, they won't. And that's totally fine. And like, this is a great example of that. Like at one point in my life, this person was my entire CareCo plan. It was like based on this one person. And I probably thought about this person every day because it was like, weighing on my mind. And now I don't even remember this person's name. Like I cannot remember this person's name.
Yeah, they were very nice and smart, talented kid, person. But yeah.
So disclaimer there. What was that? Just in case. Yeah.
Just in case.
Yeah. Allegedly.
No, they made a very good impression. I think they did. I think it was a lack of experience probably in the company level of managing projects.
No, I'm not saying this on a spite level at all. I think that life worked out, thank God, beautifully. I think that everything that was supposed to happen happened. I like, this is not, I have zero hard feelings. Like, this is not, I'm just saying, practically speaking, in my own head, it's wild to see how I had everything pinned on one person, and now it's gone to the opposite extreme where I can't even literally recall this person's name. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And my point is, you have to transpose that to like your current problems, where you're like, okay, when something seems like it's the end of the world, or you could realize that, guess what? If life decides to take a different course, or to expand the aperture, or to like whatever, this will literally not even take up an ounce of brain space in your head.
It's funny because going back to the DeepSeek story, when we were right before DeepSeek came out, I felt like we were stuck with we needed, for something specific, we need super high inference, super high speed inference, like a few hundred tokens per second with very low latency and high intelligence. And it seemed like the only place to get it would be with one company, Cerebras. But then we discovered that if you don't do that 200,000 per month plan, then it's there's no one to talk to. As nice as we tried to talk to them, and we have a nice friend in there, it wouldn't. And then I was like, I think we're checkmate right now. I mean, I had some sort of back of my head optimism that we'll figure this out, but then like that night I saw some post on Twitter where someone was saying that there's a big there's a big people are there's a big chaos going on over there because of the what they see about, and I was like, what is DeepSeek R1? And I started looking at that and I'm like, oh my God, this is it. It's good timing. So yeah, so if I would have felt like that person, okay, if we can't get that, how do we move next? And it could, sometimes you could feel like without a certain person, without a certain connection, if they don't give you what you want, you can't move forward. They're blocking you, they're standing in your way, you can't move forward. But it's not like that. Just do what you can, let it flow. Something's going to happen.
Right. The road just widens. They're still there. They're standing in their spot, but, yeah.
Or you realize you need to go in a different direction.
Right. 100%. Yeah. Speaking of, I guess this kind of ties into it. I met with, maybe we'll just beep out the name of the actual fund, but I met with the, so the description, which we could keep in here, is, a lot of groups of payers, most health systems have venture arms, and it basically serves a dual purpose. On the one hand, it's supposed to look for new innovations to bring it in so that they're always staying ahead of things. But I think more practically, it's become kind of, a gold standard, or like, every startup's dream, where like, if you could get in with one of these guys, they're going to essentially guarantee you, distribution to very high quality sources, and I know that to be a fact. Like there's companies that I know that have managed to do this successfully, and kudos to them. It's obviously not easy, and that's exactly how it worked. Like then they got distribution to a lot of big people, and that just propelled them, and it's wonderful, and it's something that every startup in our space wants. So I had a cool meeting with them this week, and it was interesting. The guy walked me through a bunch of questions, asked me a bunch of things, and he's basically, after 29 minutes with a minute to go, after he asked me every question, he could have just told me this at the beginning, but whatever. I guess he wanted to do his research, and he's like, all right, love the product, love the tech, makes perfect sense, totally get it, but you're a little too early for us because we want you to already have a couple of these insurance plans, these specific insurance plans on board, and because you're, and then we'd be interested, essentially. And I was like, oh, it doesn't work the other way around. We're like, you find new tech and then you distribute it. And he's like, no, we kind of want that validation, which, by the way, from their perspective, totally makes sense. Like they want to see, okay, have you been able to convince one of these plans to take you on? And
one
then
that was real product market fit, right?
But it kind of puts you on this like chicken and egg problem where like the plans won't take you serious. Because I've spoken to some of the plans that are members of these, and they're like, this was like a year ago, a year and a half ago, where like I had a call with one of these people, and it was like the head of care coordination at this insurance plan. And she's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is literally our goal for this year, is to get better at care coordination. Love it. Set up a meeting like 3 months later with their team. They get on. Wow, we absolutely love this. One of them is like, her name was Heather. She's like, I need paperwork on this today. I'm speaking to my team about this today. We absolutely need this. Whatever. No problem. Send it off. Boom. Totally silent. Followed up a bunch of times. Totally silent. Now, I do not think it's personal. I don't think that their mindset changed on the technologies. It's just these people are really, really busy. They've got a lot going on, and it's not their number one priority. But the point is that it's so difficult to nail them down to actually like make a decision, to start a pilot, to actually go through those steps, because it requires work on their part. So like it's this chicken and egg problem. Where like, but if their venture partner came to them and said like, hey, we invested in this company, or we are supporting this company in one direction, in one way or another, we want you to take them on, they obviously would listen to that, but then they won't do that until they they put you on this chicken and egg problem, which is part of the fun of the health tech.
But I think one of the benefits that we have is that we can kind of move up market slowly. We're now dealing with like the bottom of the market in sense of like small businesses, very small businesses, or maybe SMBs. You can call actually more small businesses.
What's an SMB?
Small to medium sized business, but that's probably a little bigger. That's probably a few hundred to 5,000, something in that range. But I would say we're like literally in the bottom of the market in terms of business sizes, which is much easier for us to enter. And slowly, with that, I think we can move up market. It's not like a naturally progressive thing to go from like where we are to the payers. But I think if we have 1 million patients on our platform, the payers are going to look at us very differently. The insurance companies are going to look at us very differently. Even though we're targeting. Right now, we're doing more of a value. We're doing more of a fee-for-service world where efficiency is really what they're mostly interested about. But we'll have the evidence about the quality gains too, and I think that's an advantage that we have when you're only targeting the big, enterprises. It's very hard to penetrate unless you know somebody,
Right.
So,
yeah, my job is just to kick doors. Like that's it. I had a really nice podcast actually.
Kick them open.
Literally, just kick them open. That's my job all day, is just kicking open doors. And probably like 9 times out of 10, the door swings open, but it's a broom closet, But that 10th one is a room.
You're like, oh, we're getting closer.
Right, but then that 10th one is a room, and then 9 out of those rooms are rooms that are closed, but then one of them actually leads upstairs, and then like that's just life. I had a really pleasant podcast today with Josh Liu. He's a health tech founder out from Canada. He built a company called Seamless MD. Cool company. They basically built a platform to kind of GPS patients through different healthcare. Like,
what does GPS mean?
Meaning, so his example, the way that he explains his company is the same way we went from paper maps to GPS.
Okay.
So right now, when patients, let's say, are leaving the hospital or after a procedure or anything that requires something like knowledge after, it's literally paperwork. They send them home with paperwork, like physical papers. So he built something that kind of that's digital, that sends them reminders, and hey, here's the meds that you should take, and here's what you should do next, and you can kind of coordinate with it. So it kind of handholds the patients along, let's say post operation or something like that. So he's actually from Toronto in Canada, and half his business in Canada, half is in the US. But it was a really fun and pleasant kind of podcast, and he's been doing it for 12 years now. It took him a long time to build up and really take off, and he's been putting out a lot of really good content on LinkedIn, looking back at the mistakes that he made in selling early on, and like chasing the flashy, chasing the logos, and one of the big things that he said that Shlomo, I wrote down that we should make a video on this, like this in particular, because it's a cool concept. Is like, you have to have both. So most people make one of these mistakes. Either they figure out how to pitch to the executives, but they don't think through the end user.
Top down.
Yeah.
Microsoft.
Or they figure out the end
approach.
user, but they don't align their product with the priorities of the executive.
Right.
And you have to have both. You have to have the end user figured out, the workflow figured out, the actual, and buy into them bought in. But you also have to make sure that the person that's signing the check or the order form is this aligns with their financial incentives and their priorities, because otherwise they're not going to do it. So anyway, he's been putting out a lot of good content, but we were just talking about this, how like it's so easy in retrospect to follow the thing that worked to this thing that worked to this thing that worked to this thing that worked, but you're ignoring the millions of data points and the millions of individual actions that you took that of that kind of, it's kind of like the Big Dipper in the sky, you know? Like you have thousands and thousands of stars, and within those stars, there's one pattern that happens to be the Big Dipper.
That's why some people don't believe in learning from successes. They believe learning from failures, because they think successes is much harder to attribute exactly what made your success, because you don't know the million things that, you know, that could have happened that would have either tipped it out or not. So, yeah, that's interesting.
So what's the flip side of that? How do you learn from failures? What do you mean?
If you know a certain thing,
this did not work.
It's very easy to attribute something that didn't work out to a certain point. That if that wouldn't happen, you would have gone a different route. Mm. So yeah, some people like to focus on that.
It's interesting. I think I told you this. I like to ask industry veterans, like advisors. I like to ask them this question. It's a great question. I ask them. So I show them CareCo. They're like, "Wow, it looks amazing." I say, "Okay, what can I do to make sure that we absolutely screw this up? How can I make sure that we absolutely fail?"
You know the old saying, you ask a rich person for money, he'll give you advice. You ask him for advice, he'll give you money.
Yeah. No, but not even investors. Just like someone that knows the space. It's like, okay, it's very easy for you to say a million things that I could do to make this work. But a much better answer is, what can I do now that I told you all the things that I'm doing? What can I do to make sure that I fail, so I stay away from that thing? Because then you just do the inverse.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
I just remind me that we should never, even if we grow to be something very big, we should never be that we should never be that enterprisey corporation that when someone does a demo, they speak to like the third layer management, the fourth layer management, they bubble it up to their manager, it bubbles it up to theirs, and it gets lost. It should be flat organization.
How do you do that?
You do the same thing we're doing now. You just scale horizontally instead of vertically. And it's it's about the quality of the people and the empowerment that you give them. If you think about our team, right? What if we had 50 of those and horizontally? You think each one wouldn't be focused and know how to drive themselves to success?
Okay, but they can't only be horizontal.
Why not?
Because who are they reporting up to? Who's tying everything together?
There's one CEO that makes more strategic decisions, capital allocation decisions, where to spend time, which market, what industry, but they are driving the product. They're driving the operation day to day. It's the team.
Okay, but product could be like 16 different teams. Like, let's take what we're working on, right? Let's say we have a mini team of, let's say, kind of like the Doge team that they're sending around, where they have basically, and what do they have? They have a HR person, a tech engineer,
probably an attorney,
and one other
manager.
Person. Yeah, something like that. And
team lead.
Team lead. So let's say for us, we have here's I think the team that we would put together: a designer, engineer, an end user.
Okay.
And
a stakeholder. Okay.
Yeah, an end user and
but they're not
a
full-time
salesperson.
End user.
And a salesperson.
End user is not full time. They're not.
Fine, but that person is assigned to a team. Basically, maybe they're assigned to 3 teams, but they're assigned to a team.
And so, what was it for?
And a salesperson. Same probably fractional role as the end user. Okay, so let's say we have a team like that for call guides, and we have a team like that. Like let's talk about features that CareCo has. So we have a team that's dedicated to call guides. We have a team that's dedicated to, let's say the patient profile, and to, let's say, care coach, and let's say to whatever, a bunch of like individual different things. But they have to tie together at some point. They can't be completely fragmented.
Right. So 1 second. First of all, I'm not sure the sales guy that belongs on the team, but that's a separate conversation.
Why? Why not?
What do you think? Sales guy should be on the team?
I don't think sales guy sells the whole thing as a whole, not the individual parts.
So I just saw this video from somebody, and I'm hoping it wasn't a satire show like Silicon Valley, because
Second, it's
that'd be
April
awkward.
1st. Hello.
Yeah, but the idea was that the team is always like that engineering and sales always have to be together to come out with a product that's both usable and sellable.
Contrary to what a lot of people in tech think, is you have to start. You start with sales. Sales pulls in success, drives the product, because that's your indicator of what the market actually wants. And by the way, Amazon is famous for doing, I think, the reverse PR. I don't know exactly what they call it. I think it was a Jeff Bezos idea. It's if you have an idea for a product, don't start building it. Write the press release of what the product looks like. Start with the press release and then work backwards. If you write the press release and you share it, I don't know who they share it with, internal reviewers or maybe stakeholders outside. They look at it. If they're impressed, if it looks, oh my God, this sounds amazing, then you work backwards and you say, okay, so you're starting with the announcement of what you're making, and then you work backwards. So yeah, so I think it's the same idea.
Right. Okay. So back to the question.
Yeah. So
how do you build it horizontally that still connects?
So here's the question. You're basically, so I'm talking about purely from an efficiency perspective, and also the way that I personally like to work. I like to very low, almost no policy, no rules, no management, no reviews, none of that. Just have the best people that they're fired to get things moving every day. They wake up, they want to move the needle, they're pushing forward, and just let them do that. That's how they act, that's how they behave, that's how they're at their best. And when you start layering these levels of management, that's where kind of you also chase out those people, but you also kind of constrain them enormously, and you don't bring the best out of them. So I'm talking about purely from like the ideal structure. Now you're saying there's a problem. What if we have a product and we need 20 people to work on the product? How do we split it up? So
no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, how do you ensure that the call guy doesn't end up being a completely fragmented feature than the pre-calls, then the post-call stuff, then the documentation and the tasks? Like, how do you ensure cohesiveness? How do you ensure?
So there's a way to address it. Some people think of it more as like workflows. You think of a product in terms of workflows as opposed to features. It's a workflow. Where does the person start? Where is the end? What is you trying to achieve? So you own the workflow. You own a certain flow for a certain segment of your users, a certain layer of users, if it's admins or whatever. So that's one way to look at it. So you always have to think about the workflow to make sure it's cohesive. But there's other ways to split it out. I think every product has its own challenges of how do you take this big thing that's a single product, and how do you properly slice it up in a way that you can give it to each team to go with that part and run with it, but also, like you're saying, it doesn't become this disjointed big thing, because you could very well run into that. You for sure can. Right. Like AWS, for example, feels like that. As a person that used to use AWS, when you go to their backend, not their backend, but for like developers, when you go to their portal, everything feels completely different. Their UI over here looks different than here, and it's a different experience. This was at least 5, 6, 7 years ago. I think it's still the same, but it reflects their structure. They have a lot of individual teams and individual apps, and that's why it creates that experience. So there's definitely truth to that. But I think based on the scenario, you can find out some creative way to do it. I believe so.
Yeah, that definitely would be the vision. Definitely seems to be, because to your point, like, we experience what the other side looks like every day, as does everyone. Like, at most 99, pretty much every single company you've ever dealt with, they get watered down very quickly as you go down the chain.
It's a shame, because you see good people, talented people, but they're not empowered and they're not motivated.
Right.
And I think, like, if you just flatten it out, the bad people, the people that are not self-motivated, are going to fail tremendously, because they need guidance. They need someone to tell them exactly what their role is, what their responsibilities are, what their tasks are, what their quarterly expectations are. And without that, they literally fall apart. And you know what? That's the good sign that those people don't belong in, at least in the type of business that I'm thinking of.
Right.
I'm thinking of just like...
I think we're building CareCo in a very, very unique way. Because, like, even from a sales perspective, the cool part of the way that we're building even the sales team is that, like, is I recognize that you don't need full-time salespeople. in healthcare, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And it's not about who you know in a sense that like, I have a Rolodex of people. How does this work? Relationships don't work that like, I have a Rolodex of people that trust me, and therefore I can sell them anything. You're my friend. Let's play that out for a second. You're my friend and you trust me. So I call you up on Sunday and I say, hey, Shlomo, I want to sell you a vacuum. And you're like, okay, I mean, like, I actually happens to be I need a vacuum. So, and I trust you and you vetted this company. I'll buy the vacuum. No problem. Here you go. Here's a vacuum. Monday I call you. I'm selling you a plant, plant. And you're like, okay, I'll be honest. I don't really need a plant, but I guess I could use a plant. And you're my friend. Okay, I'll pay you. Tuesday, I'm selling you, I'm selling you specialty popcorn. And you're like, I really don't need specialty popcorn. In fact, I'm on a diet. But you know what? He's my friend. I'll support him anyway. I'll buy the popcorn. By the time Wednesday comes around and I freaking show up with a box of pens, you're done. You're like, I'm not buying your stuff anymore. Please stop. Please lose my number, right? So the way that relationships work, real relationships, it's not that like I'm a sales guy and I know you and therefore you're just going to buy stuff from me and therefore I can pitch you anything. No, the obvious thing is that if I'm a real salesperson, I'm providing value. That's what I'm doing. And I know how to communicate that value. That's what makes me a salesperson, that I know how to communicate it. But what happens is I know 200 people. Of those 200 people, I say, I know Shlomo, he can really, 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 really use this product. And then I come to you and I know you have a need and I sell you the product that you need. And the next guy, I might know that he needs something completely different. So the long-winded point is that like, you don't need full-time salespeople. You need people that believe in your mission, that believe in your product, that have relationships with people that they know can use your product. So they share the mission and the passion, and they know people that can use the product, and they just have to make the connections. That's all they have to do, And so like, we've had 2 people join us this week in basically that capacity where they're like fractional salespeople. And their job is just to do that. Like, I don't need you to work full time. I don't need you I don't need you to spend 8 hours a day making cold calls. I need you you have relationships. And you want the best thing for your relationships. And and you're here because you believe that the best thing for your relationships is CareCo, not the other way around.
Is this true, by the way, specifically for healthcare? Because I feel like maybe different industries are different. Like where a salesperson, actually needs to be more proactive. He doesn't necessarily know his, I feel like healthcare is more of like this close niche, even though it's huge, but it's a close community. It's like really like, it's hard to get in, and once you're in, you're kind of inside. You know everybody. Is that true?
I think I don't know if it's unique to healthcare, but it's definitely somewhat unique to healthcare because, and I was talking about this with Josh today on the podcast also, how like in healthcare, I feel like in SaaS products, it's not about the people, it's about the product. So it's like, I'm going on a website, I'm buying a product. It's not a relationship. So like, what features do you have? What features do you have? Okay, I'm buying it. That, you do some research online, you don't have to talk to anybody, you buy the product. In healthcare, it's really about the people. Also because, I'll tell you why, because in healthcare organizations, the larger organizations, there's so many titles and there's so many roles that there is a person that's responsible to make this thing happen, and they can be hidden somewhere inside of an organization. And if you don't know who that person is, you'll never make the sale. Healthcare is not like you just go on a website and you say, hi, Mayo Clinic, I'd like to, do this business with you, and Mayo Clinic interacts with you. No, you have to find the SVP of, stargazing in order to sell your telescope. Like you have to, So it is somewhat unique to healthcare, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah. Anything on the tech side happened this week?
I'm sure a lot has happened. It's so overwhelming. It's like you think about like a week has gone by and then feels like a month.
Where our call guides are coming along.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. Generation 2 of the call guides, I should say.
It's exciting. Yeah. I feel like that's going to be our flagship product.
Yeah. It's very cool. I mean, we see it already. All our clients are like, can we have Generation 1, which we started giving out. We should probably start collecting some feedback on it. But I know for the clients that are using it, like it's...
Yeah. The only issue originally was that...
I have to say, every time I run it live, like I run it on a real client and I run a call guide, I'm floored. I'm
All right.
literally floored by the quality.
No, I thought you're like, until it's done, you're like, oh, I hope this is going to work out well.
That also. But no, but I'm literally like, every time I run it and then I read it with them, and I'm like, this is insane. Like this week, I ran it with a client on a patient, and it said, to communicate. It was telling the care coordinator to express extreme, condolences about the passing of this person's mother. Check in. How was it? How is everything? The grandkids came, making sure everything's okay. And it was like a very detailed question, and I was like, oh my gosh. And it was funny. I said this on a couple of demos this week. For some reason, no one laughed. I thought it was funny, but I was like, this is a great example of why you need citations in CareCo, because and in general in Gen AI, because the question is like this beautiful, beautiful question about showing empathy for the fact that this patient's mother passed away. And it's such a beautiful question, and it's the perfect question, unless her mother didn't pass away.
Exactly.
And then it's just like, what are you talking about? So it's so critical to always have those citations back to the source data, because you always want to like make sure that. Now, practically speaking, if I'm the assigned care coordinator for this patient, I probably don't need the citations because I'm probably remembering, and now it's jogging my memory. But still, and also if you if you transition that patient from care coordinator to care coordinator, different people do different ways. Then you always want those citations back to the source data. Like, show me the actual data, like the conversation or the care plan or the educational content or whatever the source data is that's informing this question is pretty critical. Be a pretty comedic. Pretty comical.
Yeah, I heard you saying that.
Yeah, that would actually maybe be a funny video, like asking a beautiful question like that, and they see the question, but there's no citation, and the patient on the other end is like, looks over, and their mother's like cooking dinner or something, and like, my mother's right here. What are you talking about? Mom, are you okay?
It's like, what? CareCo said your mother is not. CareCo never lies.
There's this like hilarious clip I'm seeing. I gotta find this actor's name. There's an actor who like, he's just showing up in my YouTube shorts feed. He's just like, he plays this like ridiculously awkward guy who just does really awkward stuff. And I don't know. I have to. He's on a show called a different kind of awkward. He's on a show called The Detroiters. I don't know. I haven't watched it, but like, anyway, I have to find it. But basically, he's like, someone in his work like makes a joke about like, oh, your mom, something like that. And he's like, oh, you saw my mother? And he's like, yes. And he's like, oh my goodness. And he picks up the phone and he's like, Dad, I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is Mom is still alive. The bad news is she's seeing my boss Raj. He's like, it's very funny. So that would basically be this concept in the reverse, where it's like,
yeah.
So that would be a funny video. We got to make that.
Yeah, that would be fun.
It would be funny. Yeah.
Either Tim Robinson or Sam Richardson. One of those.
Who's the white guy? Because there's two main actors on it.
Yeah. Tim Robinson.
Tim Robinson.
Complexity's good, right?
Hilarious.
He plays Tim Cranwell.
Hilarious. Like, it's just the funniest thing. At least the clips that I see are hilarious. I can't speak for the show.
Creator of the show.
It's so funny. Like, this guy's like super talented. Hilarious. Anyways, yeah. So it was definitely quite a week. I feel very tired. I also went to MMA last night and got choked really, where the guy like cranked my neck, and like all day I'm like having meetings. I just like had pain here. So I don't know. I'm definitely, and then after today's experience and all the meetings I had today,
draining, huh?
Yeah, definitely tired and ready for the weekend. But I have a pretty packed day tomorrow also, and then get a little Shabbos, never hurt nobody, and then we start it all again.
Are you wrapping up now?
No, I don't know. Just you know what, the final thing maybe we could talk about, because I feel like we're probably up on time, but I was really reflecting on this week, how like every person at CareCo, maybe we said this last week, I don't remember, but like every person at CareCo is like living their absolute fullest potential. At least I feel like.
Do you agree?
Would you agree?
What do you mean by living that?
Meaning like every ounce of your talent is being used to its fullest extent, maybe even a little beyond it.
Not constrained by anybody.
Not just not constrained. But the work that I'm doing,
about myself, I agree 100%.
the work that I'm doing, the work that you're doing, the work that Shlomo you're doing, the work that our other folks are doing, like every single person could not be using their talents any more than they are at CareCo. Like it's almost like, they're stretching themselves to their extreme. Yeah. Which is a super good feeling because you wake up in the morning, you're excited. You're like, this is freaking fun.
That's the power of being flat and small and no management, no bureaucracy, no managers and no rules and no, come on, just, let's get good people, just do great work and that's it.
Amen.
I was actually a thought that I was having this week that I thought about.
Yeah.
I was thinking, you remember we had this conversation with this vendor about creating an integration with all these EHRs. It was like a $30,000, $50,000 contract. I was reflecting this. I don't know how the thought came up, but I was thinking, if we had a lot of funding, if we had a lot of money, we would have done it, no
100%,
problem.
100%.
And then we would
just to be able to say we had it.
And then we would have found ourselves in a rabbit hole where we were building that. I'm like looking at in retrospect, it's a blessing we haven't done it, not for the money, but for the focus. It wasn't the right thing to focus on. But if we had that money, we would get distracted by that. There's so many things that we didn't do because of money. But if we had the money, we would have done it, and now we would have been spread all over the place. And that I think is like one of the greatest reasons of not to raise, is because there's a lot of reasons not to raise, but like the most, I would say the one that tops them all is just you remain so focused on actually what provides the most value to your customers, because you have to be aligned with that, because otherwise you can't make payroll, you can't pay your bills.
Yeah.
So you're like, how am I gonna get this client? How am I gonna get him to pay for it? I need to do something that makes him worthwhile for him to pay for it. So you're focused on those things and nothing else, and that's it. So I think that's the blessing of not taking money.
Yeah. I agree. I'm going to give you a last cheers here. Here's the episode 3.
Chaim.